Hey guys, welcome back to AF Farms for this guide on everything you need to know to get started with cows in Farming Simulator 22. Let's get into it. Alright, let's have a look at the in-game help menu for cows. So cows, food, grass, hay and TMR, products, milk, manure and slurry, age and maturity 18 months. In Farming Simulator there are cows that produce milk and cows that don't. Different breeds of cows provide a different amount of milk and also achieve different selling prices. Brown Swiss and Holstein cows are used for dairy farming, while Angus and Limousin are only bred to be sold for profit. Total Mixed Ration TMR is the best food for cows and will maximise their milk production. Find more information about this type of feeding in the respective section on how to produce Total Mixed Ration. Alright, let's take a quick look at the two different varieties of cow. So in the two varieties we've got dairy cows on the left here, and then we've got our cattle / breeding cows on the right. Okay, so first up, the milk cows. So we've got a Holstein, so pretty much quintessential dairy cow. I mean, everybody's seen one of these, I'm sure, in their life. So that's the Holstein. Then over here we've got the Brown Swiss. So this is the Brown Swiss. So once again, dairy cow. And then in the adjacent pasture just here, we've got the Limousin. So he is a cattle or breeding cattle. So beef cattle, whatever you want to call it. This one here is the Angus. So the two main differences is these two cows here. So the Angus and the Limousin won't produce milk. Okay, so they're just here to be fattened up and sold for profit. Okay, whereas our dairy cows, so our Brown Swiss, which we've got here, and our Holstein, they will produce milk. So that's the main difference between the two types. So these two guys here basically have identical productivity in terms of how much milk they'll produce, how much slurry they produce, and how much manure they'll produce based on the food type. And these guys need TMR to get the maximum effectiveness for milk production. Okay, these guys on the other hand, so our beef cattle, so I'm just going to refer to them beef cattle, but the game refers to them as, I believe, breeding cows. So if we just check the in-game menu quickly. So what do we got? Angus, this type of cow is bred for profit and can be sold. Cows like grass and hay and TMR. Additionally, they require water. This is a calf. Animals that are healthy and older than 18 months can reproduce. Whereas the Holstein, for example, this breed is used for dairy farming and produces milk. So these guys actually function a little bit more like pigs. So the product from the beef cattle or the breeding cattle is more cattle, okay, or more cows to sell. So that's how you make your money. So these guys hit a peak price on easy economy of 3,500, okay, and then their value starts to go down. So basically once they get to that point, that's when you want to sell them. The dairy cows, on the other hand, you basically keep them forever because the milk that they produce is what you're going to sell, and you can turn that into other items through the production chains. So that's just a little quick overview of the two different types. Purely cosmetic for the dairy and purely cosmetic for the breeding cattle, but they basically function the same way, except for one's bred for profit, one is bred for milk. All right, let's move on. So we've talked a little bit about the different types of cows, mainly the difference between dairy and breeding cattle. When I say breeding cattle, we're talking about the cows that reproduce. So that's the Limousin and the Angus. So basically the products you can get from cows, so if we split it up into dairy and breeding, so the dairy cows will obviously produce milk. Breeding cows, which we've got a couple just over here for reference, the Angus. So both types of cows will produce manure and slurry, which you can use for fertilization, and that's the common. So that's two common products that they'll produce. However, the dairy cows will produce milk in addition to slurry and manure, whereas the breeding cattle will only produce themselves for sale. But obviously the milk can be used in other productions, so we'll get to that later on as well. So we can turn it into cheese, into butter, and also into chocolate, which can be then further used in other production chains. All right, let's move on. Right, first thing we're going to need to do to look after cows is we're going to need a place to put them. So what you want to do is jump into the build mode, over to animals, toggle down to your animal subsection and onto cows. And we've got three options. So we've got the cow pasture, which is this guy here. So basically just a fence, a couple of feed troughs, interaction point, etc. Then we've got the cow barn, so a little bit bigger in capacity. So you can see the fenced area at the front. Feeding point is through this roller door at the back. We've got the slurry point on the right here. And we've got the milk collection point around the side on the left. It's a little bit hard to see if I zoom out a touch. Might be able to see it. And then the animal dialog box signified by the paw. So we'll have a closer look at these in a second as well. Then we've got the cow barn large. So this is $518,500, hold 80 cows. So basically just a bigger capacity. And then the final one we've got is the cow barn with feeding robot, which is this guy just here. So basically the cow barn large with the addition of this building. It's a little bit hard to see in the build mode, but we'll have a closer look in a second. This has got the auto feeding robot, which will mix up your TMR for you. Okay. All right. So how do we place these down? So let's start with the cow pasture. So pretty straightforward. Pick where you want to put it. One thing you want to be mindful of is not to have it too close to any objects. So say for example here, our interaction points are all on the left there. If we put it up against the farmhouse here, it'd be very hard to get our vehicles in and out. So we want to be mindful of where we place it for that regard. And then also just general access. So if we pop that down there, pretty straightforward. Let's do the cow barn next. So I'm going to pop the cow barn just out the back, and then we'll have a closer look. Cow barn large, let's go. So we're going to run out of room here, I've got a feeling. So if I can just, we'll jam that one in just there. So you can see that 519,946, there's a little bit of terraforming that has to take place. So when we do this, if you see the dollar amount, it basically changes based on the slope of the land. So that's something you got to be aware of when you're placing this down. So in this case, the price has gone up to 534,000 because the land's not flat. So if we find a flatter spot, it's going to be pretty much where we need it to be. So if I'm going to just pop this guy here, and then we'll get the cow feeding auto robot one next door. All right, so that's how you place them down. Let's go and have a closer look. First up, we've got the cow pasture. So basically what we've got is the milk point just here. So that's where the milk will come out. Feed will go in here. So this is TMR, hay, forage, etc. So we'll cover that shortly. This pasture needs water. So we've got the water icon here. And this is where you buy the animals. All right. So if we jump into here quickly, you can see this is the animal dealer. We can purchase animals directly from the animal dealer and place them into these pastures. So we'll do that now. So we're going to buy one brown Swiss. It's going to charge us $50 for transport. And if we buy that, we now have one cow in our pasture. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the others. All right, here we have the cow barn. So this is the smaller of the, well, the next step up, but smaller than the larger ones. So you can see we've got a nice big pasture, a nice pasture area at the front. We've got our milk point, which is in behind here. So we open up the door. This is where the milk storage is. Okay, so if we shut those doors, this is where you'll come to get your milk. Okay, animal dealer is just here. So let's go and buy one cow. So let's go and buy a Holstein for this one. Same thing, we could get charged a delivery fee of $50. Feed point is through this roller door. And we've got an overloading trough trigger just in here. Okay, open up this guy as well. And then this is our slurry point where we can collect the cow slurry out here. Alright, so that's the cow barn. Let's go have a look at the big brother. Alright, here we've got the cow barn large. So once again, just a bigger pasture area. Same sort of amenities. So we've got the slurry point on the outside just here. All these doors open. You can interact with them. I think these doors open as well. So you can get a nice view of your animals. Okay, so we've got nothing in here currently, but this will all be filled with cows once we fill it up. Overloading trigger point for food is just there. Coming down to the other end. So it's a bit of a drive-through feeding situation, which is pretty cool. Animal dealer, once again, let's go buy an Angus. Same thing, transport it for $50. Milk production is there, so that's where we collect our milk. And then we see our cow is just sitting over in the field over there. So that is the cow barn large, and this one will hold 80 cows. All right, moving on to the cow barn large with feeding robot. So basically identical. So we've got our slurry point out the front here. We've got our gate for the feed point. So this one we can manually feed as well. All right, so we've got the same feeding point just there. Same roller door access, same animal dealer icon, and milk is in here, same as the others. Now the auto feeding robot is around the back here. So it's in this little annex / awning. So basically what we've got is we've got a space for hay. We've got a space for straw, you've got a space for silage, and you've got a space for mineral feed out here. So basically what you do is you just put your mineral feed on the pallet, And we'll demonstrate this in a little bit more depth later on. And what will happen is this robot just here, so you can see it in behind this door, which I don't think we can open. So this robot here will come out, and this overhead gantry. So what will happen first is this overhead gantry crane will come in, pick up the required ratio of food, plop it into the robot just there, and then periodically the robot will come out, drive along this gravel path, and come through here and dump the food off. Okay, so basically you don't need to worry about the feeding. The robot will take care of it, provided that we have supplied enough of the ingredients to make the TMR. Okay, so this is ideal for TMR and dairy cows because it removes the need for the mixing in the first place, because it'll do it automatically. But the only downside is the hefty price tag of 750,000, if I'm not mistaken, 722,500. Okay, but when you take into context, a cow barn large is 518,000, and if you were to buy a self-propelled mixing wagon, you're probably looking at close to 200,000 anyway. So the price does sort of equal out if you're going to buy the separate equipment. But that is a brief overview of the buildings and the cow barns and their functionality, and we're going to have a bit of a deep dive later on to especially the auto feeding one to show you how all that works. So let's move on. All right, so we talked about most of the cow buildings, but I just want to point out a couple of differences with the pastures and the main barns. So the main barns are obviously these guys right here, so much larger, bigger capacity, etc. We haven't got them all placed here, but there's the cow feeding robot, which is basically the large barn with the addition of the robot. The difference between the pasture primarily is it's smaller and it requires water. Okay, so you can see that signified by the water trough. Water is not required in the larger cow barns because the water is plumbed in and taken care of. All the buildings will produce milk, so that is signified with this icon just here, and you can see that's where the milk point will come out from. If we also jump into the menu, we can look at our cow barn here. So we've got 3 Anguses in there, and under the conditions bar, we've got milk, straw, and slurry, so that's what they produce. However, under the pasture, so you can see under the conditions bar there, we've got productivity milk, straw, and slurry. Milk is what is produced. Straw is an input and slurry is a output. Okay, on the cow pasture, for the cow pasture, we've got productivity, water, and milk. So water is an input, milk is an output. You can see there's no slurry output, so they don't produce any slurry out of the pasture. So just wanted to mention that before we move on. All right, so how do we get cows into our cow pasture and cow barns? So there's 2 ways. So at each one of these pens, there's an animal dialog box, which is this one here. So the paw print, and that's going to get us to the animal dealer. So if we hit L3, we've got the shop menu. Okay, so let's have a look. We'll just focus on brown Swiss for the moment. So we've got different age groups. So we've got 0 month, we've got 12 month, and we've got 18 months. Okay, so basically the difference between these guys is when they're going to reproduce and when they're going to be productive. So at 0 months, they don't reproduce and they're not productive in terms of milk production. The brown Swiss, 12 months, so they will start producing milk at 12 months, and every 10 months they will give us a new cow, and the 18 months will basically start producing offspring and milk from day one because they're 18 months old. Okay, so that's why the prices are different, and you can also see that the prices change based on the transport fee, based on $100 down to $50 depending on the age. So let's just buy a couple more of the 0 monthers so we can see them in there. We've got 5 0-month cows. If we come into our game menu, we've got all our cow pastures and cow pens. So the ones that have got cows in them will show up here. So the cow pasture, which we're standing at, has got 5 brown Swiss, and they're worth $60. Okay. Now the other way to get cows is to get the Wilson Silver Star trailer or another suitable animal trailer. So I've just rigged it up here, but basically the one we're looking at is animal transport. So we've got the Flegel Noah TTW140. So it'll carry 6 cows, 13 pigs, and 13 sheep. The Wilson Silver Star will take 12 cows, 36 pigs, and 38 sheep. So that's what we've got connected here. Now, the other way we can buy sheep for our, cows, is if we come over to the map, locate the animal dealer. So on Elm Creek, it's this guy just here. So I'm going to tag place by pressing triangle, and you can see that green beam of light off into the distance there. So what we can do is we can take our trailer and we can purchase the animals directly from the animal dealer and not pay the transport fee. Now there is another benefit of using a trailer like this, which I'll demonstrate once we come back from the animal dealer, and that's transferring animals from pasture to pen and vice versa, because currently there's no way to do that in game without a trailer. So I'm going to drive over to the animal dealer and then we'll come back in and continue the video. Alright, here we are at the animal dealer, so let's just turn in here. Now what we need to do is we need to drive over into this loading area. So we get the L3 open animal dialogues. We get the open animal dialogue box open, so L3. And now what we can see is we've got the same options we had before. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to buy a full trailer load of Holsteins. So we know our trailer will carry 12. So if I go buy, you can see on the right hand side there, Silver Star has got 12 of 12 Holstein cows. So if we just drive out of here and then we'll have a quick look at the trailer before we drive off, you can see the cows are all inside. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see, but they're in there. Alright, so basically, yeah, like I was saying before, two benefits are you save on the transport fee, and then the transporting between pen and pasture is a lot easier. So let's head back to the farm and I'll show you the unloading procedure and the transferring procedure. Right, here we are back at the farm, so let's go and hopefully not get stuck here. We're just going to go and unload these guys into this big barn, cow barn just here. So what we do is we drive up to the paw, so the animal dialogue. So I just got the trigger then. So sometimes you need to back it in, just get close enough. So you can see we've got the Silver Star with the 12 Holsteins. So if we select those and then square to move to husbandry, and if we jump out and have a look, so our trailer is empty and our Holsteins are now in the newly placed barn. Okay. Now, say for example, this barn, because the sheep are going to, the cows are going to reproduce. What's going to happen is we're going to run out of room, and we want to make more room for cows. We've got to move them from pasture to pasture and barn to barn. So basically, the same thing. Jump back into the truck. We are into the animal dealer dialogue box. Select the animals we want to move. So the Holsteins we just put in. Select those. We'll take all 12. Move to trailer. They are now out of this barn and in the trailer. Okay, so let's jump back in. And then we're just going to take them over to the auto feeding robot building. So we'll just drive them over. Same situation. Drive up to the dialogue box. Just there. Select the ones we want to move. Move to husbandry. And we can see them all in there. So pretty straightforward process. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so if we're using the cow pasture, we need to add water for our animals, okay? So just want to point out too, any of the cow barns don't require water, okay? It's all built in, not required by you to add water to those buildings. However, the pasture needs water, and it's signified by this water drop icon here, and you can see in the UI down the bottom, water is required, okay? So first thing we need to do is get a tractor and a water trailer, so let's go and grab those. Okay, so we want to come over into the tools menu, scroll on down to the animal section. Over to the right, you'll find a bunch of water trailers. So you can see that signified there by the water drop. So we're just going to grab the Joskin Aquatrans. So that's it sitting there. Jump into our tractor, connect it up. All right, once connected, all we need to do is navigate over to a water source. So any water source on the map will do. Any water source that is accessible by a vehicle. You don't need to own the land. The water is free. Okay, so you just got to make sure that you don't drive in too deeply, otherwise you won't be able to recover your vehicle. Fill the tank. It takes a little bit of time, so I'll come back in once this is filled. Alright, so we've got a full tank of water here, so all we're going to do now is drive over to our pasture and we're going to drop it off. So I'll see you over there. Right, here we are at the pasture, so we just drive up alongside the trigger. Got to get nice and close so we can access the overloading point. So you can see that there. Start overloading, and that will now fill our water trough. So this one's already full. So the second way to get water is basically through one of these mobile water tanks. Well, they're not really mobile, but they're a fixed water tank. So you can see that here. Drive up alongside, get the water. So to find that, come into the build mode. We go into buildings, under containers, find the water tank, $3,000 to buy. Jump into your vehicle, drive alongside, press L3 to L3 to refill, or whatever it is on console or PC if you're on that. And if we get on our Aquatrans, we should see our water levels going up. So basically we can fill this up while we're doing other jobs, but there is a cost to this water. Okay, so basically they're the two different ways you can get water. Obviously the freeway with using the water sources on the map, or using the paid method using this container. All right, let's move on. All right, now we've got some barns, we've got some cows in those barns. We need to start feeding these guys. So you can see here we're in cow barn large. We've got 3 Holsteins, so these are the dairy cows. We've got our pen information up the top with our conditions. So we've got a productivity bar, milk bar, straw bar, slurry bar, food, which is total capacity, effectiveness. Then we've got the different feed types. So this is what we're going to talk about in this section primarily. So we've got total mixed ration, hay, and grass. So the percentages are based on how productive they will be in terms of what they produce. So in the case of the Holsteins, the dairy cows, the 100%, 80%, 40% refers to the rate at which they will produce milk, slurry, and manure for sale or turned into production. So specifically with the Holsteins, we're focused on the milk. With the Angus, total mixed ration, because these guys don't produce milk, they're bred primarily to be sold, fattened up and sold. Total mixed ration may not be the best feed for them, but we're going to look at all the feeds anyway, how to create them, the best ratios, etc. Okay, so let's get into that. Right, let's have a look at the in-game help menu for TMR, total mixed ration. So total mixed ration, you can optimize your milk production for cows by feeding them total mixed ration, TMR. This is the only way to gain 100% productivity. So get the ingredients, so straw, hay, silage, and mineral feed. You can harvest grass and turn it into hay yourself if your farmer has fields of grass and the required machines. It's easy to buy all the ingredients at the dealership. You can buy bales of straw, hay, and silage under objects. Bales, mineral feed is available in the pallets section. Do you have a barn with a feeding robot? Then you only need to deliver the ingredients to the barn: straw, hay, silage, and mineral feed. The robot will automatically mix the feed and feed the animals regularly if all ingredients are in stock. Do you use a mixing wagon instead of a robot? Then you need to prepare the field in a forage mixer and deliver it to the barn. In the forage mixer, you have to add straw, hay, and silage and mineral feed in the right ratio. The mixer will show you the correct mixing ratio when you are near the mixing wagon. So we'll have a look at those in detail a little bit later on, but let's move on. Okay, so as we've already discussed, the cows require silage to make TMR for their feed. So there's 2 ways you can make silage. It's through chaff. So we've got some corn here ready to harvest, and we've got some grass. So there's two types of silage you can do. So there's grass silage, okay, which we can cut and bale and turn into silage that way, or we can put it into a silage bunker and let it ferment and turn into silage. Or we can cut down corn and turn it into chaff. So there's a couple of other crops that can be used to create chaff. Corn is just one of the ones that give you a pretty high yield. So I've got a little test field of corn and a little test field of grass, and we're going to show you quickly how to go about the process of making silage. So I've planted it. It plants like any other crop, so I'm not going to cover that in detail. Let's just hook straight into the harvesting and getting the silage ready. All right, so for the corn, we've got a forage harvester. So we've got the Fendt Katana. So let's get this guy turned on. Make sure we pipe out. So we're going to pipe out into the back of this trailer here, and we are going to turn the harvester on. Now I'm just going to quickly rip through, grab all this corn. You can see we drive into the crop there. We'll start shooting out the back. So we've got the chaff symbol, which indicates that we are bringing on chaff. So basically chaff is just organic material from crop that has been chopped up into little pieces, and it forms the basis of our silage. So excuse my driving, but I'm going to quickly cut this corn down, and then we're going to go dump it into a fermentation silo. So I'll show you what that is in a second. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Right, so we've got our chaff on board, all cut down, ready to go. So where do we put it? So we need to put it into a silage bunker. So to find them, jump into the build mode. You want to go into silos, and you want to scroll on over to the silage bunkers. So bunker silo small, medium, large. So different shapes, different configurations, all depends on what you want to do. The drive-through ones, which are these ones, can be a little bit temperamental at times when you're trying to unload it. So it's advisable not to drive over the silage heap. You want to drive into it. This one here, the bunker silo medium, is good because it has high sides and a back on it. So you can basically pack it in from the back, and your silage is not going to fall out. Okay. And then you got the large one here, which is quite big. So you can really, and then you've got the really massive one, which is this one here. Okay, so they'll all function the same way and do the same thing. I'm just going to go with the smaller one because that's probably what most people are going to use, and it's the cheapest. So just pop that down, Now in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive through and dump this off. So let's get this unloaded. So you can see there our chaff has come out, so quite a small load. Obviously you would get a lot more yield out of a bigger crop and fill this thing to capacity. Alright, so let's move on to the next step. Alright, so we've got our chaff, which is sitting just here. You can see that there in the bunker. We're at 3,793 of our fill level, and we're 3% compacted. So to get silage, this chaff now has to be compacted, and then we have to blanket it, and then we have to let it ferment. So the tools you're going to need for this job, we've got a tractor with a leveling blade and a compactor on the back. So if you want to find those, they're in the tools section. So we will go into levelers for the blade. Okay, so this is just to move chaff and silage around. There's a couple of different sizes. I've just chosen the small one. And then we've got the silo compactor. So we've got this one here for 7,000, and that just attaches to the back like that. All right, so let's jump into the tractor. We are going to lower the silo compactor down, and we're going to switch back to the front blade. I'm just going to lift it up and down a little bit if we need to. Now in this case, what will happen is the silage will, so you can see that there, it'll naturally start to spread out as we drive over this a couple of times. Now if this had a higher peak on it, we'd basically just drive up and pile it up in the middle and have a slope on either side. And depending on the amount of crop you've got in there, will determine how long the compaction takes. So you can see that there, we're compacted to 100%. So we'll drive this guy out, turn him off, head back over to the bunker silo, and now we've got the option to blanket with L3. So that silage is now blanketed and it's fermenting. So let's go and sleep for one day, and then we'll come back in and we should have some silage. Alright, here we are, we slept for one day, we're back in the bunker. So fermenting silage, 100% complete. Now if we open up this silo, we can see that we've got silage here. So the texture has changed. We're going to open up the rest of that blanket. And now what we can do is we can come through with a front loader or some other implement to pick this up. So basically what we would need is, I'll demonstrate that with a front loader and a telehandler. So 1 minute. Alright, here we are with the telehandler with the front bucket. So I've just gone for the telehandler and the universal bucket for 2,200, and this will pick up pretty much anything in the game. So basically just drive on into our silage. You can see our bucket is filling up. You can see that in there. So now what we would do is we would tip this into our forage wagon or our loading wagon, like so. And then that's one way to get our silage supply. The other way is to use the forage wagon and the milling machine, so I'll demonstrate that quickly as well. Alright, so we've got the self-propelled forage wagon or mixing wagon. So let's unfold the mixer, turn it on. We've got the milling blade in the front, which we've already talked about. So we'll just open that up so we can get into the silage bunker. Basically just drive on in, come up to where you want to grab the silage from. So you can see that's picking it up off the ground and chucking it into our wagon here. This is one way you can get your silage out of a bunker, and this is what this is designed to do. So it'll eat through your silage. So you can imagine if this was full with silage, this would just chew through it, and then you can get your TMR mixture that way. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so another way we can get silage is through grass. Okay, so we've got some grass we've planted here. We've got a mower at the ready, so we're going to cut this grass, and then we're going to turn a portion of it into hay, and then a portion of it we're just going to leave as is in preparation for turning it into silage. So we're going to do silage bales, so grass silage bales to be specific. Okay, so let's unfold the mower, get this guy turned on, and I'm just going to come this way just for ease of cutting. So lower the mower. Alright, we want to make sure we've got selected work mode. So we want to do swath drop. So we've got that, so it's going to drop out the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive through here, cut that down. Pretty straightforward. So we've got our grass in a nice windrow. So you can use a windrow for this as well. It's up to you. Alright, so for this next section of grass, we're going to turn this into hay. So I've switched the mower back to wide spreading, so it's going to drop it basically the width of the mower. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mow this section of grass I've just put in. So you can see that's widespread there. Now the reason why we would do widespread is because if we're going to do hay, we need to run the tedder over it. So it's just easier to do that in this configuration rather than the windrow that we've already done. So I'm just going to quickly cut this and then we'll come back in. Alright, so we've got our widespread cut grass just here, and we've got our windrow of grass we're going to turn into a grass silage bale, and this stuff we're going to turn into hay. So what we need is a tedder. So I've got a tedder on the back of here. So if you need to find tedders, they're in the tools section. Come into tedders, which is here. So a tedder turns the grass around so it can dry faster. So basically what it does is it flips the grass over, allows it to dry, and then that turns it into hay. Okay, so let's get this lowered, turned on. Okay, so you can see that there. So what will happen is when we drive up to the grass here, it'll change texture to a lighter green, and we will end up with hay. So you can see that animation there, quite cool. So that is now hay. So if we jump out and have a quick look, it won't show you as hay currently, but that's what the hay looks like before it's picked up and baled. So I'm just going to go through and turn this into hay, and then we'll come back in. Alright, so that's now been turned into hay, so it's sitting there loosely now. We've got to windrow this, so it's easy to pick up with the baler. So let's go grab a windrower. Alright, so we've got a windrower attached to our tractor. So the one I've gone for is in the tools section under windrowers, and I've just gone for the Kuhn GA15131 62,000. It's got a pretty decent working width, so let's unfold this. So we can see that's unfolded. Let's lower it and turn it on. Now basically what we want to do here is we want to drive over our hay and be very careful not to mix up our grass that we've just cut, because it may inadvertently change one to the other. So you wouldn't do this normally. You'd do a field of you'd do a field of grass or hay. You potentially wouldn't do both. Okay, so I'm going to windrow this up, and then we'll come back in and do the baling for both. Alright, so we're ready to bale. So I've gone for two balers, so two different ones. So we've got a small capacity round baler, so this will do, so this is actually the Pottinger Impress, so it'll do 125 centimeter bale. So this will do straw, grass or hay. Okay, then the other one we've got is the Class Roland Unirap. So a bale wrapper packs grass bales in fall so they can ferment to silage. So if we have a look at this one, so you can see on the back here, this baler has got a wrapper. All right, the foil color in white signifies that this is a bale wrapper. Okay, so bale wrappers are generally going to be in the round baling category. So if we look at a high capacity square baler, such as the Class Quadrant, it doesn't have a bale wrapper on the back. So the bale wrapping you can wrap square bales, but it is a separate process. Okay, so just for our purposes of creating hay bales, so this is really just so you can create silage, so you can create TMR for your cows. All right, so let's get this guy turned on, turn on the baler, lower the baler, and then we basically just want to drive over our windrow of hay. Okay, so we've got a bale of hay just there, and now that can be used to form part of our TMR. Okay, right, let's go and have a look at the. Right, so this is the Class Roland with the bale wrapper on the back. So we've got our windrow of grass. We're going to turn this into grass silage. So let's turn the bale on. Let's lower the pickup, and hopefully we've got enough grass here to get one bale out, because then you can see the wrapper in action. Also helps if I probably drive a little bit straighter to get all this grass. Okay, so you can see our capacity is filling up. We're about 50%. Hopefully we can get there. Looks like we're just about, so you can see it coming out the back there. It'll load up onto the conveyor, and now what will happen is it will automatically wrap, and we can continue baling while that silage bale is being created. Okay, so just if we were doing this for real life, not in demonstration purposes, bale is now getting cut, and it should. So you can turn on automatic drop or manual drop. So we just did a manual drop there. So there we go. We have got a silage bale, so let's go over and inspect that. So Silage bale fermenting. So this needs to ferment. Okay, so it'll probably take a day to ferment and then it will turn into silage. And then we've got our hay over here ready to go as well. All right, let's move on. All right, so how do we go about getting straw for our TMR mix? So obviously we can buy it. We've already talked about that at the shop. But basically any arable crop, so grain crop that drops straw, can be baled and turned into straw. Okay, so what things like wheat, oats, barley, and I think there's another one, but just check your in-game help if you're not sure. So we've got some wheat ready to go. So what we need to do is we need to make sure our straw swath is enabled. So you can see that there, enable straw swath. So currently what it's doing is it's spreading it. So if I turn that on, and now when I drive into the crop that I'm harvesting, we should get a nice windrow of straw dump out the back. Okay, which we've got there. Now that straw can be picked up and turned into bales, which we're going to do just in a second. So I'll let this guy finish dropping off his straw. Okay, cool. Right, let's come back in with the baler. Alright, so we've got our same baler from before. This is our round baler. So let's turn it on. Pickup's already lowered, and we're going to be picking up that straw. So hopefully we've got enough straw here for one bale. Might be a struggle, but let's see how we go. Okay, we've got a little bit there. Let's see if we can unload a partial bale. Can't get a bale there. So I'm going to just cut down the rest of this crop, and then we'll get a straw bale out of here. So you should be able to unload a partial bale. Some balers you can, some balers you can't. So this one in particular, we need to have a full bale before we can unload. So maybe if I turn it off. Alright, anyway, that's how you get a straw bale. So obviously pick up your straw, turn it into a bale. Then you'll have bales for bedding for your animals and also to produce TMR. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so we've got all our ingredients. So we've gone through how to acquire all the ingredients for TMR. So how to make your own hay, straw, silage, etc. Now we need to talk about how to mix it up. So this section in the in-game help menu talks about using the feeding robot or forage wagons or mixer wagons. So we're going to talk about the mixer wagons right now. So in a later section of the video, we're going to cover the feeding robot in a lot more depth, but a lot of what we're going to talk about now in terms of TMR, so total mix ration, which will give you 100% productivity, is universal. There's just a couple of different ways you can mix it, different equipment, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to cover now. So let's get into that. All right, so let's have a quick look at the forage wagons. So there's two different varieties in game. So if we go into the shop quickly, so if we go into vehicles, go to animals, we've got a range of forage mixer wagons, which we would consider self-propelled. So these are drivable, don't need a tractor, etc. So they range in size up to 26 cubic meters of capacity and 205 horsepower, all the way down to 17 cubic meters of capacity and 175 horsepower. Okay, so they've got big mixing blades in the back there to mix up the total mix ration and forage. Obviously the bigger one, bigger capacity. Pretty straightforward. Oh, and they've also got a milling machine on the front, which we'll demonstrate in a little bit. But that where the Farsin logo and that black cover is, that's got a milling machine which you can use to empty out silage bunkers. Okay. The other option is the forage wagons, which are PTO driven, so they need a tractor to be attached. So we've got 3 there. So basically the way you load your bales or your product is in through the top, using a front end loader or telehandler, whereas the others you can load via the milling machine on the front, and you can also drop bales in through the top. So we'll just have a quick look at these close up so you can see what I'm talking about. So they can be loaded from the top. The one on the left here, like I said, got the milling machine, can pick things up off the ground. The trailed one needs to be manually loaded. All right, so let's have a go at manually loading that now. All right, so I've got some bales here. So I've got purchased from the shop. So I've got some hay, some silage and some straw. So if you want to find them, come into the shop, over to objects, over to bales. You've got 2 varieties. You've got the square and the round, slightly different in price and also capacity. So if you don't have straw, silage or hay available on your farm, you can purchase it at the shop. All right, so now what we've got to do is to get TMR, we need to basically take these with a telehandler. So this is perfect for this job, and add the right ratio of hay, silage and straw into our mixing wagon to get TMR. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our tractor, we're going to turn on our mixing wagon. Okay, so you can see that going there. Now I've got automatic engine start turned off, so this will run while we are not in there. So you can see that is operating there. Alright, let's start with some hay. So we're just going to go one bale at a time and see what we get. So I've just got a bale fork for this, just to make it nice and easy for myself. And you can see why the telehandler is very useful, because we've got the reach functionality. So now if I hold that in there, you can see the hay is depleting on the right hand side, and our mixing ratio is showing 100%. Now that's showing 100% because we haven't thrown in another ingredient. Okay, so let's grab. Now from memory, hay and silage will give you TMR, okay? And you can use the straw to pad out the rest of the mix, so you don't have to use up all your straw and hay to produce TMR, because obviously they're a lot more valuable. So if we dump that in there, just keep an eye on our ratio. So it looks like it'll take, so we've got hay and silage in there. If we want to confirm what we've got, come up to the next to it, and we can see we've got total mixed ration there of 8,000 litres. Alright, so if we jump back out, so we're sitting at 56% hay, 43% silage. Let's grab some straw here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and be very careful here. So I think 5,000 litres of straw is going to be too much. So what we'll do is we'll hover over the top here, lower it down just enough so it starts to deplete. So you can see that there, I'm holding it in, and once we get to about there, I'll lift that bale out, and if you can see we're probably about half full there. So if I was to leave it here like this, we would still have TMR, but what I want to do is I want to try and figure out what the ratio is. So if we put a whole straw bale in there, and then let's repeat this process. So once you get this down once for your bale size and the size of forage wagon you've got, you'll know for future how many bales of each you need, and you can very, very quickly make your TMR mix. Okay, so let's throw another hay bale in. So this will give us 2. So I think this is going to take the whole thing. Looks like it will. Yep. So now I don't need to stand there either and hold it in. I can basically just drop it off and it will be fine. Now I've got a feeling if we just put this last silage bale in, we will end up with a perfect TMR mix. So we've got 3,500 litres of silage here. So I'm just going to hover over the top, pop that in, so we can see our silage bar is increasing, and this is probably going to top off our trailer, or forage wagon at least anyway. So let's turn off the telehandler, go and inspect our forage. So 21,000 litres of total mixed ration. So I'm just going to turn this off. We can see that there we are full, and once again total mixed ration 21,000. So the recipe was for this particular size of mixing wagon: 2 hay, 2 silage, 1 straw, gives you perfect TMR, and you can see that in the top there. Beautiful, beautiful cow food. All right, let's move on. All right, let's take a look at the forage mixing wagon. So this is the self-propelled mixing wagon. So if we just jump in here and have a quick look, you can see we've got the mixing tub in the back there, and we've got a milling blade on the front. So let's just turn this on. So start the engine, unfold the mixing wagon, turn the mixer on, and then we've got a blade here which allows us to pick up things from the floor. So particularly this is going to be for silage. So if you're in a silage bunker, we've got a silage bale here that we're going to turn into TMR. We've got some straw, and we've also got some hay. So in regards to using this machine and the bales, all we need to do is turn it on like so, drive up to what we want to consume. So you can see there we've taken on some silage. Next thing we're going to do is take on some straw. So our straw ratio is through the roof here. So what we're going to do is grab some hay. So I've got some hay piled up here as well. So I'm going to have to probably get some more silage for this. Alright, so let's pull back out of there. I'll grab another silage bale. So to grab a silage bale, come into the shop, over to objects, purchase the silage bale there. So the silage bales are the white ones wrapped together. Now what we want to do here is we want to get our silage up, so our TMR ratio is going to be bang on where it needs to be. So if I pull out now, you can see there that we are, so I'll just turn this off quickly. So you can see our mixing ratio. So we've got 43% hay, 34% silage, and 22% straw. So what we've got on board is TMR. So if we want to confirm that, basically all we do is jump out, stand next to the machine, and you can see in the bottom right hand corner there, total mixed ration is the mix of food, okay, and we've got 9,657 litres. Now if I go back in here, turn this on, and consume some more straw, what'll happen is it'll throw our ratio out. So see how that bar's gone red on the straw there? So that signifies we're no longer making TMR, and this is most likely going to be forage. So you can see that there in the right hand corner. So forage gives you a lower productivity for your cows versus TMR. So TMR is ideal for milk, and it will give you the maximum productivity, okay? So basically what you can do is you can do it this way, or you can load your pallets or your bales directly into the mixing wagon through the back, or through the top, sorry. However, this machine with the milling blade on the front is perfectly designed for this sort of job and working out of silage bunkers, okay? So that's a little overview of the mixing wagon. Let's move on. Alright, so we've talked about the mixing wagons. Let's take a look now at the mixing ratios and specifically which combination of straw, hay and silage will give you either TMR or forage. So I've got 4 mixing wagons here, so it doesn't matter if they're the self-propelled or the tractor-trailer combination, the information is going to be the same. So let's have a look at these in depth. Alright, number 1, we've got total mixed ration, and we've got hay, and we've got silage. So the ratios aren't exactly perfect on each of these examples, but it's close enough to tell us what type of feed mix we're going to get for each one. So this has got hay and silage, no straw, and I've omitted the mineral feed from most of these just to keep it consistent, but the mineral feed doesn't have any bearing on the composition of the silage, it just gives the silage a boost, okay? So position 1, we've got total mixed ration, so hay and silage together, no straw, and just pretend there's no mineral feed in there. Alright, position 2, we've got forage, so we've got hay and straw. So hay and straw will give you forage without silage, okay, so there's no silage in here. Moving on to position 3. So position 3, we have forage. This time we have silage and straw, but no hay. Okay, so that gives us forage. And then the last one, which is TMR, so total mixed ration. So we've got the right proportions of hay, silage, and straw. Okay, so depending on the ratio that you mix with, you've got to be very careful, otherwise you'll end up with forage, even if you are trying to get TMR. So it's very important to stay within the little arrow markers to get the right ratio. So if we just recap, position 1, we've got TMR, so that's hay and silage. Position 2, we've got forage, which is hay and straw. Position 3, we've got forage, which is silage and straw. And then position 4, we've got TMR, which is hay, silage and straw. Okay, all right, let's move on. All right, so we talked about the different feed types. Now we're going to talk about the adding of the feed and the effect that it has on effectiveness. So we've got total mixed ration, hay and grass, and there's a 4th type in there, which is forage. Okay, so I've got 4 trailers loaded up here. So if we go from here, we've got TMR, then we've got forage next door, then we've got hay, then we've got grass. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to load these in. And what I should also mention is we've got 1 brown Swiss, 18 months old, in 4 identical pen setups using the pasture. So we're just going to observe what's happening with the food. So this will be the same in terms of loading of the food for each of the breeds. So I'm just going to load this in. All right, that's the grass. So let's do the hay next. So what we want to observe is basically how they impact the productivity, and just to sort of show you the loading operation. So this is the hay going in to pasture number 2. All right, now this is the forage. So we're going to have a chat about forage at the end of this section. So this is total mixed ration. So this is the ideal mix for the dairy cows. So let's see if we can get this unloaded. So we can pop a bit in here, so that's accepted it. All right, so we're not going to fill that up all the way. We're going to try and dump this into our newly placed barn, just for testing purposes. All right, here we are at the barn. So total mixed ration, start overloading. So you can see the cow barn will accept TMR. Okay, so if we go and check our So you can see that's worked. We have a look at our cow pasture. So we've got the one with hay filled up here, the one with grass here, and then we've got the one with the TMR, which we've spread across the cow barn and the pasture. Okay. All right. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the feed types, and I wanted to expand on the forage situation. Okay. So forage can be used as a food. Now, there's a couple of ways you can get forage, which is different to TMR. So TMR is, like we've talked about with the cow feeding robot and the other recipes, a combination of straw, hay, silage, and mineral feed, depending on whether you're using the auto feeding robot or manually mixing. Okay, we've got a couple of forage wagons here with various mixtures of hay, straw, silage, etc. to demonstrate how forage can be used. Okay, so we've got forage here, which is hay and straw. Okay, so that's considered forage. Then we've got another forage wagon here with hay and silage. Okay, now that's actually considered TMR. Okay, so to get TMR, we don't have to have straw, but this is the bare minimum. Then we've got a forage wagon which has got forage in it, which is silage and straw. Okay, so silage and straw will make forage. And then we have a failed TMR mix. And what I mean by a failed TMR mix is, on purpose, I've got these ratios out of whack. Okay, so I haven't got the correct amounts of straw in there and the other components to balance out to get the perfect ratio. So you would consider this potentially failed TMR, which gives you forage. Okay, now the question is, which of these forage can we feed to the cows over here? So we've got a selection of dairy and a selection of beef cattle, both 5 of each, both 18 months old. So they'll be in line for consumption of food. So let's go through and have a look which ones can be fed and which ones not. So this is forage, I believe. Let's double check that. Yeah, so this is forage. So what we should be able to do here is drive up to the food trigger and we should get the overloading icon. Okay, so we can overload this type of forage, which is hay and straw. So let's put a bit in. So if I go, so I'm not going to do the whole lot, just want to demonstrate each one. So hay and straw will go in. Okay, what's the next one we've got? Okay, so this one is total mixed ration. So we know this will go in. So let's just do our due diligence and double check. So total mixed ration, there we go. No problem there. All right, number 3. So I believe this is forage. So this is forage and this is silage and straw. Okay, so let's see if this will go in. Okay, so as you can see here, the silage and straw mix will not be received by the cow pasture. So we'll make sure we're just tipped on the left there. So we're not getting the overloading trigger. So that indicates to me that this variety of forage cannot be fed. So what we'd have to do here is we'd have to throw some hay in there to salvage that mix. So just in case for whatever reason you decided you were going to try and feed that, you'd be unsuccessful. All right, so let's have a look at our failed TMR mix. So this is considered forage. So it's got all 3 ingredients. However, the quantities are incorrect. So my estimation is this should go in no problem. Okay, so let's pull on up here, see if we get the trigger. Yep, so we're getting the overloading trigger there. Okay, so that'll be considered a food option. And I am just going to check the straw and silage mix one more time, just to make sure. Okay, so just double checking the straw and silage mix. Definitely not received. Okay, so that's pretty conclusive. All right, let's move on. All right, let's talk about the cow barn with feeding robot. So we're looking at the feeding robot right here. So this is the feeding robot, and the cow barn itself is basically the cow barn large with 80 animals. Okay, pretty much relatively the same, exactly the same layout. Can still feed them in the conventional method through this manner here. However, it's got this annex / building at the back, which is primarily designed for the feeding robots. This is going to mix up your total mixed ration perfectly every time, and it's going to feed the cows on an automatic basis. So what it is it basically has a provision out the back here for the different recipe items for TMR. So we've got hay, we've got straw, and we've got silage. So silage being the largest component, straw and hay being somewhat equal. And then obviously what will happen is this little grab arm in white here will go across this gantry, pick up the required amounts of the different inputs to make the TMR with the addition of mineral feed. So mineral feed lives out here, signified by this icon here. We've got some mineral feed on a pallet just there, ready to go. So if you want to find the mineral feed, it's in the shop under the pallet section, scrolling over to the right here, and it is the Shalman mineral feed, $1,000. Now, it's debatable whether mineral feed actually does anything for your cows and for TMR, but it is advisable to use it just if you are going to use this building, just to make sure you're getting maximum benefit out of your TMR. Now, what you'll notice too is if I just jump into the build mode, you can see we've got this gravelly sort of texture outside of the barn itself, or the robot area. So what will happen is, we'll see this shortly, the robot will come out on this path, go through here, and then deliver the food into this area, and then come back out on a loop, and then park itself back in this bay, ready for the next feeding cycle. So there are a couple of benefits of using this building. So if we just go into the build mode, we'll look at it in the animal section. So we've got cows, cow barn auto feeding robot. So 722,500 to buy. Okay. So you can see that they're quite a sizable building. Like we talked about, is the addition of the auto feeding component on the back, which is where all the cost is primarily. But when you weigh up the cost of a mixing wagon, for example, so a trailed one will cost you 50 grand, okay, which is not a huge expense. But if you wanted to get a self-propelled option, they're upwards of about 240,000 for a big one. So it basically saves you the cost of having to purchase one of these items in the first place. Okay, so there is a little bit of a saving there, or a little bit of a neutralization of cost, but the primary benefit is the automatic feeding and the exact ratios of TMR every time, and it puts the feeding on a bit of a passive loop. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to worry about it. All you have to worry about as the player is to make sure these bunkers are promptly filled with the required feed types at all times. And obviously in your in-game menu, you will see the effectiveness bar to let you know if you're getting low, etc. So what I've done here is I've put in 80 Holsteins. So they're the dairy cows. Now, if you're going to use the feeding robot, you'd probably want to focus on milk production. If you're going to go for beef cattle, you could probably just use a regular barn and feed the guys hay, because they don't produce any milk. So therefore, you're not going to have to worry about the intricacies of the TMR side of things. Okay, right. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get this guy filled up with some ingredients. So I've got some trailers here ready to go with the required recipe, and also some bales on. So some telehandlers with some bales. So let's see if we can chuck these bales in first up. Let's see what happens. So my understanding is we should be able to just pop this down, and you can see that there is now being converted into straw. So we've got 9,000 litres of straw. Okay, happy days. Let's get this guy out the way. Now, I should have mentioned before moving on, I've purchased these items from the shop. So I've gone into the bale section. I've got a square bale of hay, a square bale of silage, and a square bale of wheat straw. Okay, so basically you don't need to farm all these items. You can purchase them from the shop. Obviously it's a little bit more expensive in the long run, but in the short term it'll allow you to keep your production going. So I drop this guy in here, start to be consumed like the hay, like the straw. So yep, that's in. So the silage bale will do the same thing. So let's go and pop that in. Right, here I have the silage bale, so let's go and drop that off. I'll pop that in there. You can see our silage is now come up. So we've got 8,000 of hay, 5,000 of silage, 9,000 of straw. So the inputs are quite sizable. All right, but obviously when we've got 80 cows in there, they're going to chew through the food pretty quickly. So it's imperative that we have a pretty good stock of the required feed elements. All right, so we've got a trailer of silage here. So let's go back this guy on in. So you can see that's going in there, no problem. One thing you got to watch out for is you don't clip the roof with your trailer. So it looks like we're pretty clear here. All right, let's get so this is the straw. So let's go put that in. All right, that's the straw. Let's go grab the hay. All right, here after hay, let's get that in. All right, here we are. So we've got the hay in, we've got some straw, we've got some silage, okay? Now I should mention too, if we jump back into this menu, water's not required because the building takes care of the water component. We're still able to produce slurry and manure as per normal, and our health and reproduction will accelerate once the day kicks over. So let's go sleep for one day, and then we'll see what happens with the animals. So one thing we forgot to do is put the mineral feed in, so we'll do that now. So you just both got to place the pallet just here. So you can see that's getting consumed into our production point. I say production point, but just the cow barn with auto feeding robot, and that'll disappear. And then that also has a capacity which you cannot see from this menu. However, you should be able to get an indication, I believe. No, so it doesn't tell you. It'll just basically, when it's full, the pallets won't get absorbed. It'll just sit there and use it as needed to mix your TMR. So make sure if you're going to use the mineral feed, throw that in there as well. All right, so we have, okay, so without the mineral feed, nothing happened. Okay, let's go and have a look. So let's go and sleep again. So it may not work without the mineral feed, so that's actually something useful to know. Okay, let's go ahead and sleep. All right, so here we are. We can see the robot is actually mixing up some TMR as we speak. Okay. Now I just want to make sure we've got decent quantities of everything. The mineral feed's low. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So we'll observe this. So it's obviously it's going in for the hay now. Okay, so we can see the hay going in. So let's see what happens once this is ready to go. Okay, so here we go. Robot's coming out. Now let's see if we can block this, because I'm sure some people are going to have that issue. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, so there is a collision. So we've got to make sure we keep this path clear. Okay, so they'll go up the ramp here, and then we should see the TMR start to come out. Alright, so you can sort of see the TMR coming out down the bottom there, if I get in front of this thing. So we are getting some feed into the cow barn. So let's go and have a look at the... So I don't want to block this guy, I'll stand over here. So it's showing 0 litres currently. So I'm wondering if it's because we don't have enough food on hand to build up the capacity. So that's basically how the robot will operate. So let's see if it goes back in. So it clips into the ground every so often, but don't worry about that. Now what we should see is if it's going to mix up some more, these shutters will come down. Okay, so the shutters are currently up, which would indicate we can now refill this with the required feed types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and refill these all the way up, and then we're going to observe the next feeding cycle and see if we can't get our animal health and productivity up a little bit higher. All right, here we are. We're back at the auto feeding cow barn with topped up silage, straw and hay. So you can see in the bottom right hand corner there we've got the maximum values of the inputs. So 49,000 litres of hay and straw, 45,000 litres for mineral feed, and 115,000 litres for silage. So we've topped up everything. Everything's maxed out. We've dumped a truckload of mineral feed into here as well to observe what happens. So a couple of things. So on the hour, every hour, this auto feeding robot just here will come through and go through an animation of picking up the various ingredients to make the TMR. The robot will come out, do a little circuit on this track here, go up to the end of the feed trough, and then come back down and spread the feed out. Okay, so the animation happens regardless. Every hour on the hour you'll get an increase in feed based on how many cows you have, and that happens automatically even if you sleep. So what we're going to do now is we are going to fast forward till 9 o'clock, and then we're going to observe what happens with the feeding procedure. Alright, so we're just speeding up time, so it's about to hit 9 o'clock. The shutters come down, so I'm just going to quickly change this time back. So the shutters come down, the robot will come out, grab the required amounts of the ingredients, and if we can see that there, dump it into the feeding robot. So this is the mixer. So it doesn't matter if we keep the time scale sped up or the same or reduce it, it's going to go through the motions of the same animation regardless of what time scale we're using. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate too quickly is if we jump into the cow menu. I've run this for a couple of days, so the total mixed ration is up to about 14,666 litres. Okay, so once this animation triggers, basically the food goes in. Okay, so it's just going through the motions of grabbing the ingredients, and what we'll do is we'll skip ahead time until this thing comes out, and then we'll observe it doing its thing on its path. Okay, so the TMR is now ready. The robot will deploy, and it's very, very slow. But what I might do is I might speed up this section, so I'll follow it through just so you guys can observe what happens, and then we'll come back in afterwards. So you can see there it's dumping the food out into the feed area. So if we observe our feed, still the same. Okay, so the feed hasn't actually gone up yet. The feed actually goes up, like I mentioned before, when that curtain comes down. So we'll follow this guy back out. I'll speed this up. Okay, so the roller door closes. And then if we wait now till 10 o'clock, which we're not going to do, but the cycle will repeat. So one thing worth noticing is if you're inside this facility, when the time ticks over to the hour, the animation won't trigger and the food won't go in. So just be aware of that. So that also includes loading and unloading. Loading of the various crops required. So just be aware of that also. So let's have a quick look at the food now. So we've got 14,666 litres. So let's go ahead and sleep. All right, so we've slept for a full 24 hours. You can see it's now 8 o'clock, 8:01. So that means on the hour, this is going to go through its procedure for feeding. So we check the feed amount. We're up to 22,333 litres. So you can see it's increased overnight. And if we come over close to the barn, we can see our quantities of product left to make. So this is how we monitor the level of the barn and the auto feeding robot, so we can obviously monitor how much TMR is being made. Now, one thing to notice is if you are missing any one of these ingredients, so hay, straw, silage, or mineral feed, no food will be produced. Okay, so you have to have the mineral feed for this particular barn, otherwise the TMR will not produce. Okay, So you can get this via pallet in the shop. So come over to objects. Let's get out of the way of this guy while he's doing his thing. So in the shop, on pallets. So that's it there, the Schaumann mineral feed, or Schumann. So you can buy that in bulk, or you can use mods to purchase it, or you can use the multi-fruit buying station, which is this mod here. All right, so it's just up to you. But if you're playing with base game equipment, you're going to have to manually load it. It'll take 45,000 litres roughly, so quite a substantial amount. And obviously you don't need to have these topped up to the maximum to produce the TMR, but you do have to have all these ingredients available for TMR to be produced, otherwise no TMR will happen, okay? So then your cows won't produce milk, won't be optimal health, etc. So just something to keep in mind. One thing I will mention quickly is, along with the TMR, this barn will still take any of the other inputs, such as forage, hay, or grass, so the respective feed types for the cows. So you do have the ability to use the robot, which is why you would use this in the first place. But you do have the ability to manually load the food types via conventional trailer or forage mixer or whatever you've got. That will all still work. Okay, so let's wrap up our thoughts on the cow feeding robot. So pretty much, why would you want to use the auto feeding cow barn? So basically, if you're going to do dairy cows and you don't want to have the hassle of mixing TMR constantly, then this is going to be probably the best way to go, because it basically takes out the need to do the manual mixing yourself. You just provide the raw ingredients, so the hay, silage, straw, and mineral feed, and the robot will do the mixing for you. If you're going to go beef cattle, so not dairy cows, the cow feeding robot is probably not the best option, because TMR is only really beneficial for the dairy cows to produce maximum milk output. So if you're doing breeding cattle, etc., TMR is not really required, so you would go the hay or forage route, get 80% productivity just to produce the slurry and fatten up those cows ready for sale. So the auto feeding cow robot barn, probably not the best thing for you. Cons of this thing, it's pretty expensive outlay, and it does require all 4 ingredients, particularly including the mineral feed, for it to operate at all. So unlike the conventional TMR mixers, you can omit a couple of the ingredients. So to create TMR, you can just use hay and silage. You can omit the mineral feed and omit the straw and still produce TMR, okay? So if you want to forego the mineral feed, so mineral feed, allegedly, from what I've researched, doesn't have much of an impact, if an impact at all, on the production of milk. Okay, but I haven't done my own testing on that, so it's going to be up to you whether you include mineral feed. But one thing is for certain, if you do use this cow feeding robot barn, you are required to have mineral feed as well. Okay, so just be aware of that if you're going to go down that route. Other than that, it's basically just the large cow barn with that addition. So you just have to weigh up if you're going to go down that path or put up the extra cost elsewhere. It's just up to you. All right, let's move on. All right, so we've covered off on the food types, so TMR, forage, grass, hay, etc. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through productivity, health, puberty, reproduction, etc. So what we're going to do for this section of the tutorial is we're just going to add total mixed ration. So we're going to work off of a 100% ratio. Now, basically, your feeding strategy will be determined by what you have on hand at the time that you want to feed the animals. So we're going to focus on the dairy cows. So we've got the cow barn large here, and we've got a cow barn with the breeding the beef cattle. So we're going to look after them in a separate section. So we're going to focus on the dairy cows first. Okay, so what I've done here is I've gone ahead and purchased 3 of the different varieties. So within the variety, so we've got the Holsteins here. You can buy them at different ages. So we've got an 18-month, a 12-month, and a 0-month. Now the 18-month will breed straight away, so reproduce. 18-month will produce milk straight away. The Holstein 12-month-old will start producing milk at 12 months, but won't reproduce until it gets to 18 months. Okay, and then the 0-month Holstein, which was quite a lot cheaper, won't start producing milk for 12 months. So it's got to grow up in age before it will start producing milk. The reason why you would do that, so if we go over to the animal dealer quickly, is basically to save on the cost. So if you want to go cheaper cows to begin with and let them grow up before they start producing, or you want to get straight into the deep end and have them produce and reproduce straight away, it's up to you. So what I would recommend is probably starting with a bunch of 12 months. So they're starting to produce milk straight away at least. So you're not having to wait 12 months for milk production, but that's just my personal preference. But you can do basically whatever you want to do. All right, so a little bit more of a detailed look at this menu. So like I said before, pen information, we've got productivity, which is the overall productivity of the animal based on its feed. We've got milk, which is how much milk it's produced. We've got straw, which we're going to leave out for the moment, and the slurry, which will be produced off of what they eat. Okay, so the cow barns have got onboard slurry storage. So we've spoken about that before, but we're going to cover that in a bit more depth later on. This section is just talking about feeding. So what we're going to do is we're going to load these cows up with some TMR, and we're just going to observe what happens to the bar, the health and reproduction bar, for a couple of months. All right, let's go get some food. All right, so we've got some total mix ration on board. We're using a forage wagon. So this is one of the bigger ones you can get in the base game. So what we basically need to do is we need to drive up into our barn. So we just want to make sure we've got a tractor that's small enough to fit under this awning, and we are going to start overloading. So basically what will happen is, if I just zoom in, it'll start filling up our barn. So you can see the food capacity is going up slowly, and the cows should come on in and start having a feed. So one's coming over. Let's get this guy moved out of here. All right, so we've got some food in there. So we've got 24,000 litres. We've got 3 animals. We can see the yellow bar signifies we're getting low. So when that turns to red, it's getting really low. When it's in the green, it's just a sort of a traffic light system to let you know the capacity of the overall barn. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to sleep for 1 day, and we'll come back in and we'll check in on what the animals are doing. So, all right, we've slept for 1 day, and you can see straight away that our health of our animals has shot up to 100%. So basically the health just indicates that they've got sufficient food to eat, and they haven't run out of food during the course of the prior day. Okay, so we see we're down to 23,457 litres. Total mixed ration the same because we've just got the one food type in there. Now our 18-month cow is now 19 months old, so you can see its reproduction bar is going up by increments of 10. So over the next 12 months we'll get a new cow up here. The 12-month cow is nearly at puberty, so this guy will be able to produce a cow shortly. And the 1 monther, its puberty bar indicates that it's 5% the way through. So as you go through each month, those bars will go up to signify when it's ready to reproduce. So basically the animals will go from a puberty bar. So once they've hit puberty, they turn into a reproduction bar, and that reproduction bar will signify when you're about to get a new animal. Okay, so that's how you can start to grow out your fleet or flock of cows, for lack of a better word, over time. Okay, and you can see we've got 160 litres of milk and 399 litres of slurry. So if we go over and inspect our barn, you can see our slurry 399. So this is where you would get that. We haven't got any manure because we haven't got a manure heap or straw, so we'll cover that in a later section. But let's go have a look at the milk quickly. So our milk section, which we would load up from here, is 160 litres. Okay. All right, so that's feeding our dairy cows. So basically now what will happen is we just make sure we maintain our stockpile of TMR. So this is where it gets a little bit challenging as you get more and more animals, because they'll consume more. So you can sort of scale it up as you get more confident with handling the animals. So there's no reason why you need to start out with 20. You can start out with as few as possible. Just depends on how you want to play this. Okay. In the beginning, it's probably better to start out small and then build your cow supply up from there. All right, let's have a look at the Angus and how they perform with feeding. Okay, so we're going to feed these guys TMR just to keep the testing similar and see if we get the same sort of results. So these guys are going to be around the same ages. Obviously, they haven't reproduced or they haven't done anything because their health is 0. So we're going to throw some food in for these guys. This time we're going to use a forage wagon. So let's go grab one of those. Right, so you don't need to use the forage wagons per se. I mean, to mix TMR, you do need a TMR mixer, but you've got this. I just want to showcase the 2 different options. It just depends on what your budget is and what you want to use, but basically operate pretty much essentially the same way. Let's go and drop these guys off. Now it's dropping out on the left-hand side, but if we wanted to, we could change that to dump out the right-hand side. But as long as you get that trigger, the food's going into where it needs to go. So if we go and check our animal menu, you can see we've now got capacity of 16,000, 21,000 litres of TMR. So the food's gone to where it's required to go. So let's drive one out of here, and then we're going to go sleep for 1 day, and we'll see how these guys are looking. All right, here we are. We've slept for 1 day. So you can see now cow barn with the Angus. All right, so let's have a look at our animals. So our 12-month Angus has gone up to 14 months, so it's just about to reproduce another offspring. The 2-monther, so it'll be obviously 2 months old because we've slept for 1 day. Sorry, slept for 2 days. So its puberty bar is increasing, health is 100%, health 100%, 20 months. So this guy's on the path to reproduction as we speak. We've got no milk, okay, because the Angus, the breeding cattle, as we've talked about, don't produce any milk. However, we do have slurry, and these guys produce slurry as well. But what you will notice, so obviously this is the reason why you would go breeding cattle over the dairy cows. You can see the value of the animals is much, much higher in comparison to the dairy cows. So the Angus, currently 20 months old, is 2,538, as opposed to the Holstein, which is 1,275. So we're playing on easy economy here, so some of these figures will be different on different difficulty levels, but this is basically this is the name of the game with the cattle for breeding for selling. Okay, so they on easy economy they'll reach a peak price of 3,500, and then from there they'll start to go down in value, which I believe takes about 36 months. So we'll have a look at that later on as well. They're basically the two methods. Okay, now you just need to make a decision on if you're going to go breeding cattle or dairy cows. It's probably best to separate them into two different pens. So you can give your Holsteins, for example, the TMR. So they're going to produce maximum amount of milk, all right? Because TMR is basically for milk production, whereas the Angus and the Limousin, you might just feed them hay or forage. It just depends on the effectiveness that you're going for. Okay, but much of a muchness. I mean, if you just feed these guys hay, you're going to get 80%. It's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper than TMR. However, for milk, TMR is pretty much a must to get the maximum amount of milk out of your cows. And like I said, same thing. Like I was saying before with the dairy cows, once they hit puberty, their puberty bar will turn into a reproduction bar, and the reproduction will kick in. And then you can start building out your flock of beef cattle. And then the name of the game with the beef cattle is once you get a bit to sell, then you sell them off, make 3.5 grand. So it makes sense to try and buy them as cheap as you can, fatten them up over time, let them reproduce potentially, and then just keep selling the offspring. Okay, so that's they're the two different play styles of cows. Okay, but most people are going to jump into dairy because you can use that milk in other things, which we'll cover on later. All right, let's move on. Right, let's talk about the best time to sell cows. Now, basically the Holsteins we've already talked about. You don't really want to sell them because they're going to be your dairy cows producing milk. So if you're going to go down the milk path, these are the ones you want to keep. Okay, what you do want to be mindful of with the dairy cows is when they reproduce, that if you are going to expand your farm operation to get more cows into different barns and pastures, to build out your number of barns and number of cows potentially. You can look at using mods that'll have bigger capacity barns, but if you're using base game buildings, you are limited to the amount that the barn holds, and you won't be able to produce any more cows after that. Now, in terms of the cattle cows, so we've got a range of cattle here, and I've fast forwarded time up to the peak price of $3,500 at 35 months, so 36 months I believe it is. So at 34 months now, we're at 3,416. So basically what we would expect to see is when we hit 36 months, this guy will hit 3,500 in value, and then we'll sleep for one more day. At 36 months, we'd expect to see that price start to come back down. So let's go and cycle through some sleep days, and we'll check in and see what happens. All right, here we are, 35 months. So 36 months, 1 day to get 1 more month to go to peak price. So you can see the price has gone up again. The other guys will come up in price as well, but I just want to really showcase what happens to the peak price and then the decline. Okay, so let's go ahead and sleep 1 more day. All right, here we are, 36 months. So you can see there, 3,500, 36 months. That's basically the peak price for our beef cattle. So this is the Limousin and the Angus. So I've got the Angus in this pen just to show that. You can see the price fluctuations between the different age groups. Now if we compare that in price to a calf, so if we look at the animal dealer, we can see a 0-month Angus starts at $300 plus a transport fee of $50. So $350 investment. So that's a 10 times return using my maths on what we see here. Okay, so not a bad return on investment. Okay, now so this is 36 months. Let's sleep for 1 more day, and we should see the value of this Angus drop down. And you can see here, 37 months of age, it's now dropped from 3,500 to 3,458. So basically what this tells you is that 36 months is the peak price. So whenever you get a an Angus or a Limousin that is $3,500 in value, that's when you want to sell it. Okay, so that is the highest they will go. They won't go any higher. And if you hang on to them, they'll still reproduce for you, but basically they start to lose their value. Okay, so how do we go about selling these guys? Let's have a look at that. All right, so here we are at the cow barn where the Anguses are, so you can see them in there. Easiest way to sell them is to come over to the animal dealer dialog box, open that up. So we're in this particular barn. You can see on our right hand side here our stock of cattle. Okay, so we've got our 37-month Angus here. So if we select that, pick the quantity that we want to sell, we've only got one. So it's going to charge us a fee of $100 to transport this to the animal dealer, which is over on the other side of the map. So we do get a reduced cost. So let's sell that guy. And there we go. We've sold him for $3,358. Now, if you want to sell them without taking the hit with the transport fee, what you want to do is you want to come over and grab an animal transport trailer. So animal transport, you've got a couple of different options here. You've got the Silver Star trailer, which will hold 12 cows, or you've got the Fleagle Noah, which will carry 6. So let's grab the Silver Star. You just need an appropriate truck as well. So all you need to do is hook up your trailer. Now the reason why you'd want to use a trailer like this is because it allows you to transport not only animals to and from the animal dealer, but animals from pen to pen as well. So what I'm going to do is just to demonstrate this, we've got 63 Holsteins in this pen here, or this barn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move some of these guys over into one of the pastures. So just say, for example, we had to make room for some offspring, okay, or we wanted to expand into a different barn. Basically just drive up to the animal dialog box trigger, which is a paw icon just there. So we get the dialog box. So basically it tells you on the left hand side we've got the Silver Star, which is empty, and then we've got the Holsteins on the right hand side, which are grouped by age. Okay, so let's go the 19 monthers. Let's have a look at them. So we've got one of those 34 monthers, we've got 12. So 12 is the maximum that this trailer can carry. Okay, so it allows us to select 12. Let's go move to trailer. Those cows have now been moved and we can see them sort of on board there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this guy over to this pasture here. So generally speaking, we should just be able to drive up, get that dialog box to open. So we've got the Silver Star on the left. Select that, select the number that we want to move to husbandry, and we can now see they're in their new home. Okay, so basically let's go back over to our Angus and let's take a couple of them to the animal dealer for sale. Right, so we just come over like we did to the other barn, over to the animal dealer icon, open it up. Let's just grab one of these. So move to trailer. So we've got one on board. We're going to drive over to the animal dealer. So the animal dealer, if you didn't know, is located over here on Elm Creek. So that's that there. So I'm just going to go tag place. And now we've got a green beam of light to signify where we've got to drive to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this guy over. We'll sell him and then we'll come back in. Alright, here we are at the animal dealer. So basically all we're going to do is we're going to drive on in to this loading area just here. So we'll get the icon, open animal dealer dialog box. So we've got the Silver Star trailer, we've got our one Angus, we're going to sell that. Now ideally you wouldn't just sell one with the trailer, you'd have a full trailer load of 12 to sell, and that'll give you a significant amount of money if they're at peak price. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a bunch of Limousins back to the farm. So we're going to go the 0-monthers. We're going to grab 12. We've got 12 on board, so you can sort of see them in there. A little bit hard to see, but let's drive back to the farm and then we're going to throw them into the pen, and basically the cycle continues. So basically every time you have 12 cows to sell, what I would do is I would take them over, sell them, grab another 12, and then basically just repeat the process. Okay, so you've always got a sort of couple of groups on the go, and at different stages throughout the game and different months you'll have 12 cows ready to go for sale, and you just basically keep rotating through that cycle as long as they're fed and looked after and all that sort of stuff. The other benefit to selling the cattle along with pigs are very similar is the price doesn't fluctuate. So all year round you'll get $3,500 max price on easy economy for the beef cattle. Okay, so it's not doesn't fluctuate like the crops do at different times of the year. It's very, very stable. Okay, so that's another added benefit of doing it this way. And also utilizing the trailer, we can basically, on our way to the animal dealer we're loaded, on our way back from the animal dealer we're loaded, so we're not wasting any time and space with the movement of the animals as well. So here we are at the pen, so it's the pasture, the barn, keep getting them confused. Open the animal dialog box. We've got the Limousins there, 12, moved them to husbandry, and they are now in the barn. pretty straightforward. Okay, so you can start to see how we can expand our cattle operation based on being able to move animals from one pasture to another. And the only way to do that is with a trailer similar to this. You can't move cattle or cows from pen to pen or pasture to pasture in this menu. All has to happen with a trailer. Okay, so that's another reason why you'd want to look at using a trailer if you were going to look to expand out your farm operation that way. All right, let's move on. All right, next thing we're going to do is look at how to get manure out of your cow barns. So one thing I will mention quickly is the cow pasture does not produce manure, okay? Only the cow barns produce manure because there is no input for straw at the cow pasture. So as you can see, cow pasture, there's no provision for straw, whereas the cow barns have a provision for straw. So straw is another input. So let's go throw some straw into the barn and then we'll come back in and we'll place the manure heap. So basically I've got a trailer of straw here, so it can be loose straw, straw bales, doesn't matter. It'll all go in the same way. So I'll demonstrate straw bale next. So make sure you've got a trailer that is going to fit into the working area. So we'll throw a bit of straw in there. All good. Right, so we've just got a telehandler here, so we're going to grab a straw bale from the shop. So let's grab one of those. So we come into objects, bales. Let's grab a small one. I suppose it doesn't really matter. Grab one of these. So we'll pick this up. Now basically what you would do is you'd have these stockpiled on your farm. So you'd potentially have a baler or you'd use a forage wagon. So you can see we've got the straw bale here at the cow pasture, but nothing's happening. So I won't take the straw at all, okay? So just something to point out. The straw bale also won't be received into the cow barn, so it's got to be loose. So what we need to do is, if you're going to use straw bales, you're going to need a straw blower. So basically what will happen is if we come in here, get to this point here, basically what should happen is it should start consuming that bale. Okay, so we just double check our animal menu. You can see the straw is not being consumed. So what we need is a straw blower. So to get one of those. All right, so if you want to get a straw blower, you basically come into animals, under tools section, you've got the Anderson, which is here, which will take a round bale normally, or you can go this guy, which is better suited for square bales. So we're just going to go grab this. All right, so we've got a straw blower. Keep calling it a straw baler, but it's a straw blower. So what it's basically designed to do is take bales of straw and turn them into loose straw. Okay, so we hook that up like that. We've got our telehandler with a bale on it. All right, so we've got our straw blower. Okay, so you can see that there. What we need to do is so we've got a little tailgate on the end here. So normally it comes in closed. So if we open that up, okay, that gives us easy access to put a bale in. Okay, so we've got our 9,000 litre square bale from before. So what we should be able to do here is load this guy up. Plop that in there. Okay, let's get this guy closed. Alright, so we've got our straw bale loaded, ready to be turned into loose material. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to drive on through, so you can know, actually I'll just point out quickly. It's got a blower spout on this side. Okay, so we want to try and blow the straw into where the animals are. So what we would do here is we drive in on this side of the barn, and then once we drive in, we'll get the start blowing straw trigger, and then we can just sit here and that'll blow straw. And if we go to our menu, we can see that our straw is now increasing. So 7,516 litres, 8,000. So I'm pretty sure that's a 9,000 litre bale. Maybe it was more. So even though the bale's not moving, it's still being consumed by the straw blower. Okay, once completed, straw's all gone. We've now got straw into the barn, so we can just drive on out. The other option is to put in the loose straw. So we've just got a trailer full of loose straw here. So the benefit of this is we don't need to bale it. However, you'll need a hay loft or something similar to store the straw loosely. So if we just drive on in, that'll drop off straw. It just depends. So it's basically much of a muchness. It just depends on how you store your straw. But if you're going to go with the bales, you are going to need to use the straw baler. If you do it loosely, you can basically use any trailer that will hold straw. So it just depends on how you want to go about that. All right, so that's how we get straw in. Let's move on. All right, so our straw is maxed out. We've got 38,000 litres. Now we need a place for the manure to spawn, okay? So straw basically equals manure. So if we come into the build mode, into buildings, we're going to find silos, and we want the manure heap, okay? So basically what you need to do is place this somewhere near your farm, or actually sort of near the barn. So we just want to get it in a position where, so around here looks all right. Around here would probably be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go, see what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out the back here just to make it nice and easy. Now you will see some other tutorials when the game was first launched that there was a bug with the manure heap and you had to use the manure heap extension. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this has been rectified for cows. It has been for pigs. So let's place the manure heap down, and basically what should happen now is when we sleep, the manure will appear in here, and then we have an easy loading point for the manure just there. So let's go ahead and sleep and see what happens. All right, so we've slept for 1 day, and you can see we've got manure to spawn in our manure heap. So you can see that there. And that is now coming out of that barn, all right? Because these two pastures don't produce anything, and it's too far away from this one to produce manure. So that is basically how you get manure in the manure heap. Now you do have the manure heap extension, which is in silo extensions. That one will give you a further 4 million litres on top of, I think the silo is 4 million itself actually. Let's just double check that. Yeah, so it's very huge. I mean, you're not going to run out of room with that anytime soon. So let's go and let's get some more manure in here for a couple of days, and then we'll come back in and we will show you how to retrieve it and then what you can do with it. All right, now we've got some manure. What can we do with it? So we've gone and purchased a manure spreader. So if you don't know what a manure spreader is, so if we come into vehicle tools, manure spreaders, and there's an assortment of spreaders here. So basically what this does is it allows you to use the manure as a fertilizer for your fields. Okay, so let's go and grab some manure. Basically just drive up to this filling point here, hit L3, and you can see our manure heap is going down, and we've got manure on board in our trailer. Okay, now let's go find a field to fertilize. All right, so we've got a field here. It's already been fertilized, but we're just going to go through the motions anyway, because basically what you can do is come on down, unfold your manure spreader, turn your manure spreader on, and then you basically just drive over your field. Now it's got a pretty small working width, all right, so if I just turn that off quickly, but it's also got activate double application rate, so we can get 2 lots of fertilizer down for 1. So if I turn that back on, we're now getting double the fertilizer put down, which is further economical for your spreader. Now, the reason why you want to do this is you want to take advantage of the manure that you've got for free. You can also sell it at the BGA, and depending on the map you're on, you can sell this at other sell points. So if we have a look at that quickly, I'll just turn this off. In the prices menu, you can see here we've got manure. So the BGA is buying it for $106, but you have to own the BGA to sell it there. And the BGA on Elm Creek, I believe, is over here. So you've got to own the land that it's on. So if we go over to so it's 1.5 million to buy. Okay, so probably not feasible for everybody, but that's how you would sell it at the BGA. But other than that, free fertilizer as a byproduct of having cows. So pretty cool, and that is that. All right, let's move on. All right, let's talk about Slurry. Okay, so you can see Slurry there. We've got 16,972 litres on board. So we go over to our barn. So let's go check out our location. So this is where we get the slurry out of. Okay, so it's already the barn already comes with an onboard slurry tank. Unlike the manure, which is required to put the heap down to collect manure and add the straw, the slurry is inherently stored in the barn through this point here. Okay, now we can boost the capacity of the slurry tank. So you can see there we've got 16,972 litres of about 100,000 litres, I think, for the cow barn. If we want to boost the silo capacity, we can come into silo extensions, and we've got 2 options here: liquid manure extension tank small for 500,000, and then the 2.6 million litre variety just here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this one down, and I just want to have a quick chat about some of the features of it. So you can see straight up that there's no interaction point on this tank. It's strictly just an extension. So basically what that means is this tank for slurry is going to boost the capacity of this barn, and this point here is going to be where the slurry comes out. Okay, now if we go back into our menu, we can see that our slurry bar has really shrunk down to a very minute green. So that basically signifies the overall capacity of that bar has increased dramatically. So in this case, it'd be like 2.7 million litres of slurry, okay? So that's one way to boost your capacity. The other way is to use a silo in the silos menu. So we've got a liquid manure tank, okay? This one is independent because you can see there on the front. So if I swing it around to the right there, it's got an overloading point and a loading point. So this functions independently of the extension. So basically it means you have to cart the slurry through the slurry tanker from the barn where I'm standing over to this point. It doesn't automatically transfer like it does with the extension, okay? So my preference is to use the extension, placed close to the barn. You're never going to run out of storage if you go the larger option. Okay, all right, so now how do we get our slurry out of here and what do we do with it? Let's go have a look at some vehicles. All right, so you've got the vehicular option. Okay, so we've got slurry tanks. So we've got Hydrotrike and the Oxbow. So basically pretty straightforward. These guys can be used to transport, and they also can have a slurry spreader attached to the back. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to use the slurry tank. So we're just going to go with the Schouten V10 130. So if you find the tank that you like, push combinations with R3 and it'll tell you the appropriate attachment that goes with that. So you can see, for example, these guys here have got an inbuilt slurry spreader built into the trailer. So it's no additional cost. So ones like this one will take a slurry spreader of your choice. So just for ease of, actually, let's just do this one. We're going to go to the Farm Tech, I think. So let's buy that. All right, so we've got a slurry tank. Let's go get this guy filled up. So we just pull alongside. We'll get the start filling icon. So we're just going to go 3,000 litres there. And now we just basically go over to a field that needs fertilising. So you'd use your in-game HUD to figure that out. All right, let's get this guy unfolded. So the slurry distributor is what this is called. So we'll get that in position. We'll get it lowered. We are going to drive over the field so you can see it's coming out. You can't see it in this crop, but it is coming out of the tank down below. And you basically just drive along your field. Usually you do this after ploughing or whatever stage is required. You can also activate double application rate as well, so you can get 2 fertilizer states. Obviously you go a little bit slower, but that's basically how you can use your slurry to fertilize your fields. Now you can also sell the slurry the same way as you can with the manure. So if you want to check the prices menu for slurry, you can see that there. And it also tells you your stock on hand in the prices menu as well, okay? Now why you'd want to use slurry and manure for fertilizer, so obviously fertilizer is quite expensive. So having cows in particular, and also pigs, I think they're the 2 main animals that produce manure and slurry. So if you've got them on your farm, you've basically got a free fertilizer supply in the form of slurry. You've got an additional supply of manure if you choose to use straw. And then they're also producing milk in this case. So it's a bit of a cost saving by using the slurry, and the manure. However, some of the equipment can be a bit expensive to begin with. It just depends on what combination you use. So that's going to be something you need to reconcile if that's the way you want to go. But I'm of the opinion you might as well use it if it's available. Just make sure that, you know, this is something you do probably later on in your playthrough with cows. It's not something you probably jump into straight away because they are quite expensive to set up, but the long-term benefits are quite good. All right, so that's slurry covered. Let's move on. All right, now we've got some cows. They've produced some milk. The next thing we need to do to transport that milk for sale or to move to a production is we need a trailer suitable for milk. So if we want to get a trailer for milk, come into the tools section, scroll down to animals, cruise on over to the right here, and we've got a couple of different options in the base game. So the Lizard MKS8, which will do fertilizer, herbicide and milk and water, and the MKS32, which will do the same as well. And then we've got some mods, I think, installed as well, but that just depends on if you want to use mods or not. We're just going to go for base game equipment. We're going to grab this one here, and that's it, sitting there. So we'll get that connected. And basically all we want to do is drive on up to our milk collection point. So before we do that, I'll just quickly show you. So it's in here. This icon here is where the milk's at. If we open the door by pressing circle, you can see that it's stored in this area here, just so you know what's going on. It also tells us in the UI down the bottom how much milk we've got. So we've got 31,260 litres on board currently. All right, so let's get this guy filled up. So basically all you do is drive alongside or close to this point. You'll get the start filling icon and you can see the milk going in there. So we'll get this guy filled up. All right, we've got 31,000 litres on board. So what we can do now is we can sell this milk directly, or we can turn it into other things through a production. So we'll talk about the selling first. So to find the sell points, you want to come into the prices menu, navigate down to milk, and we've got couple of locations, 3 locations here. So we've got bakery, dairy, and Johnson's Farmers Market. So what we're going to do is we are going to go over to the dairy. So I'm going to tag the place because I also want to show you something else when we head over there. Okay, so we've got that tagged. If we look on the map, once we cruise out of the view of this building, you can see the green beam of light over there. So on Elm Creek, if we have a look at the map quickly, where the dairy is located is over near Field 38 in this little industrial complex area. So that's where we're going to drive to. So I'm going to drive over there, and actually I'll just zoom out so you can get a bit of a view of where we're at. So in relation to the main shop, which is where we're located, down this way here. Okay. Right, so let's drive over there, and once we get there, we will continue with the milk delivery. All right, here we are at the dairy. So we're just going to pull on up to the sell point, which is right here. So we'll get the overloading trigger there. So let's back on up. So that'll overload the milk into the dairy, and you can see our money is going up. Now we've got 600 million because we're using the government subsidy sign. I'll let this sell, and then we'll come back in with the profit amount. Okay, there we go. So $67,127 of milk sold. So we're on easy economy here. That's why we've made a substantial amount. Now, if we go to our productions menu quickly, you can see we now have no production chains active. Okay. Now, what a production chain is the dairy is one of the production chains, which I'll explain briefly in a second. The dairy basically encompasses these 3 buildings, okay? And there's an interaction point at the front here, which we're going to have a look at now. Now, basically, this production point is available for purchase. So if we hit L3, we can buy this building for $70,000, okay? So before that, I just want to show you something quickly. So in our finances menu, if we have a look at what we've sold in milk, so you can see here sold milk $67,127. What's actually happened here is we can use this as a sell point, which we've already talked about. Okay, so we're on the dairy here. So the dairy functions as a sell point before you purchase it. So you don't have to purchase this dairy, you can leave it as a sell point. However, if you want to purchase it, you can, and then it will now become a production, not a sell point. All right. Now you can also place a dairy down in the production menu, factories, and we can see the dairy. There's one here. This is this type of dairy, okay? And then there is another one, which is this one here, which is basically identical to the one we've got here. So we've just got to place that on the land that we own. However, when we build our own dairy, it's a production point straight away. So it doesn't function as a sell point. So if you want to retain this building as a sell point, don't purchase it. But if you want to use it as a dairy, then go ahead and purchase it. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is when we purchase this, the milk that we've just sold to this dairy will now be in stock, ready to use for milk. Okay, so that's an extra tip. If you want to, you can sell all your milk into the dairy, fill it up first, and then purchase it. And then you've got milk on stock ready to be turned into productions, which allows you to basically double dip. So you get the sale of the milk first, and then you can turn it into productions. Whereas if you purchase it straight away, then put your milk in, you won't get paid for it, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So let's go ahead and purchase this. Okay, building has been purchased. We can see that we've got 31,255 litres of milk in there. So that's from the milk we put in previously. So we've been able to offset the costs of the purchase because that 31,000 in milk netted us about 67,000 in sales. So you can sort of see how that's beneficial to do it that way, rather than purchasing this straight away and then adding the milk later, okay? All right, so we can come in here now and press L3, manage production point, and we've got a couple of different options for production chains. So you can see we've got butter, we've got cheese, we've got chocolate, we've got milk. So the items on the left are what can be produced from this production point. The items on the right, incoming materials, are milk and sugar. So this production point will receive milk. So we've already put some milk in there, and it will also receive sugar, which is going to be a separate tutorial on how to get sugar. And then the outgoing products, you can basically see the recipe in the middle of the production menu there. So basically for butter, 15 milk will turn into 13 butter, 15 milk will turn into 13 cheese. And then if we have, so if you can see that there, sorry, that's more accurate. So to get butter, we need 15 milk for 13 cheese. Cheese is 3 milk to 2 cheese. So that's the output. And then we need milk and sugar to produce chocolate. So if we just focus primarily on one of these, so actually we'll probably do both. So I'm going to activate both of these. So they're already active by default. Now we've got them set to storing. So what that means is what will happen is pallets of product, so chiefly here butter and cheese, are going to spawn in this location, which can then be used for further sale. So basically what we would do is either sell it directly or take it into another production chain such as cakes or wherever else receives butter, and what was the other thing? Cheese. So you can sort of start to build out your productions with other production chains at this stage. So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave that there running, and then we're going to come back in and we'll see what products we get. All right, so we're back. So we've slept through 2 days now. So we've let the production chain run for a little bit. So basically you can see also there in the productions, we've got the statuses running for the butter. The cycles per month is 480, and the production cost per month basically relate to the cycle cost, okay? And that sort of gives you an indication of the overall costs and how much you can expect to produce per month, okay? So in this case, the butter will produce more. There'll be more output of butter because the recipe is higher and the cycle rate, well, the cycle rate's actually higher for cheese, but the recipe rate is much lower. So it's 3 into 2, whereas this one's 15 into 13. So you're basically getting almost equal quantity when you carry out the butter recipe. So let's have a look at the pallets that have spawned. So I want to mention too, this is set to storing. So outgoing products, butter and cheese, are set to storing here. And this is where they store. So we've got our butter just here. So we've got 2, 3, 4 pallets of butter. And then we've got our block of cheese here, which is 1,000 litres, 560 kilos. Now these pallets will be needed to be moved via auto-loading trailer or via forklift and suitable trailer. And then they can be sold. So if we have a look at butter, let's go find butter. So butter can be sold at the fast food restaurant, grocery mart, Johnson's Farmers Market and the bakery. If you were to want to go down that path, and if you toggle through, you can see the peak price and the low price. Cheese, on the other hand, so it's 5,778, so it's actually quite valuable, and basically able to sell at the same places, okay? So I won't demonstrate how to move these via forklift or auto-loading trailer. You guys can have a look at my other tutorials on that. But yeah, that's basically how you take your milk, turn it into another product. Now, we can take this butter, for example, and turn that into cakes through the bakery. So that's an extended production chain tutorial. That basically closes off the life cycle of getting milk from our cows, taking it to a dairy, turning it into another product. Obviously, we haven't demonstrated the chocolate because we need sugar, but I'll do a bit more of an in-depth tutorial on the dairy at another stage where we look at all the productions together. So actually, one more thing before we move on. If we go back into the production point and we want to set this to auto sell, so you can do that this way. So instead of setting to storing, we can set it to selling. So what will happen now is every time a pallet is produced 1,000 litres, it'll automatically sell our product for the current market price, and we take about a 30 to 40% hit on that sale for the auto delivery, okay? So the benefit of doing it this way is, A, you don't have to transport it, you sell it automatically, so you get some cash flow. But the downside is because the auto selling penalty is so high, it's sometimes not worth it, in my opinion, to do that. You're better off stockpiling it, selling it in a big batch. But the only problem with that is you need some sort of auto-loading trailer. If you're on PC, you've got plenty of choices. Console, not as many choices, but it's still possible. But there are other mods in the production chain that allow you to, for example, if we change this to distributing, we can distribute this to the next production chain in line. So the butter will go to the appropriate production chain that needs it. And the cheese, if that's available, depending on the mods you play with, that'll do the same. Basically, the distributing will move it to the next location where it will be received, and you won't have to pay the penalty, okay? But if there's nowhere for it to go, it will stay here in storage until you set it to storing, okay? Now, another thing I'll mention quickly is once you run out of room in this pallet area just here, so pretty decent area for this dairy, what will happen is the internal storage, so of this section here, that bar will start to fill out until you get to an appropriate level, probably about maybe 10 to 20,000 litres, which might equate to about 10 to 20 pallets worth of storage. So you can store 10, 20 pallets worth of product in the actual facility, along with, let's say, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 16 pallets in this area here. So just something to keep in mind. All right, let's move on. So there we have it, guys. My guide to cows in Farming Simulator 22. Hopefully it's been pretty comprehensive. I know it was a bit of a long one, but a few things to cover, and hopefully we've covered them in enough detail. If there's anything that I've missed or anything I'm going to update, I'll post that in the pinned comment or the description below. If you've got any feedback, observations of your own gameplay, feel free to leave them below as well, and I'll get back to you if I can. Otherwise, yeah, once again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video around if it helped you out. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one, and bye for now.